Okay, so let's get going. Um, just as a note of introduction, I'm Duncan Chappell. I'm head of analyst relations here at CCgroup, and I'm speaking to you from my living room, where I guess quite a few of you will be as well. What I'm going to be talking about today are the results of a survey that we've made to get some insights from the analyst relations audience about how agencies like ours, how successfully agencies like ours are meeting the needs of vendors. I'm going to be recording the webinar for people who can't make it. We had an awful lot of people who registered. Probably half of them won't be able to make it. So we'll be recording it. I'm going to be showing you some slides which are quite dense today, lots of text because there's a lot of insight and I'd love your help in making sense of it. So I thought it'd be useful to share with you a lot of the free text comments that were given to us by people in the survey, but I'll also make sure that we put these slides online as well. So you'll get a follow-up note letting you know how you can get the replay of this webinar if you want to go back, listen to it again, share it with your friends, or if you want to come back and take a look at the slides in more depth. I want to start off naturally by introducing CCgroup. I mean, many of the people on the call know us and have worked with us, but I want to say something about the company and also about the analyst relations team here, just to give you a little bit of context on us and who we are and how we work. I should also say, I'm sure many of you have worked with Zoom in the past, but there is a question and answer panel where you can type in your questions and comments. I'm not a very good multitasker, so I won't be paying a lot of attention to them really until the end of my comments. But what I will try to do is leave plenty of space for your questions and your comments. I'm going to put my watch in front of me so that I can make sure that I'm on time. And what I would love is to be able to engage with your questions and your comments. So just as a little bit of insight into CCgroup, we are a fast-growing business-to-business technology, PR, and marketing company. So we're focused on B2B technology. We're headquartered in London. We've got a couple of dozen people in London and another half dozen colleagues in the United States. We are more than 30 years young, owned by our employees. And unusually for an agency, we have an analyst relations team in-house working with analysts worldwide. Obviously, most of the analysts we work with are in North America because most analysts are in North America, but we work with analysts around the world. Client satisfaction is really important for us. It's a key metric internally, and of course it matters for our clients as well. So we're very proud to be ranked one of the top 3 agencies year after year in the major client satisfaction survey that is shared between agencies. And we do this work focusing in 4 deep areas of specialization: financial technology, mobile and telecommunications, media technology, and enterprise technology. As a company, we've worked in many other technology verticals as well, but that is where we are best. I also want to say something about the analyst relations team at CCgroup. I'm the head of the practice. I used to be an industry analyst like 20 years ago. I was an analyst at Ovum, going through the ups and downs of the dot-com boom. Really interesting to be living through another period that feels a little bit like that. But since being an analyst, I've had the great fortune to have been able to work with more than 100 companies on their industry analyst relations, working with a really wide range of firms, including privately held organizations, public organizations, tiny startups, most of the big 20 telecommunications and technology providers. I'm blessed by working with my colleagues Elena and Zoe. Zoe's got a background in investor relations, has done a huge amount of work at a prior agency working with Dell, and now at CCgroup is in a very different situation, working quite broadly across a wide range of firms. And our colleague Zoe also has a background in business-to-business communications, but is working quite broadly on the telecommunications and financial technology side of the company primarily. We have a newsletter. You can see a little link down there. If you want to get a monthly update from us, then please visit that web page and register. So what I want to do is very quickly, in just 2 slides, summarize everything that I'm going to be saying in the rest of the webinar, and then you'll know. If it's super dull, you can just spend the rest of your time doing something else. But let me really focus on these key findings that have come out from this survey that we've conducted, and the key finding is that on the one hand, people who want to buy analyst relations services primarily are using analyst relations because of the way that it generates relationships and it generates insight. And on the other hand, when we speak to people who are on the agency side, they are really focused on generating citations for clients. And maybe that's a paradox, maybe this is a necessary tension, that agencies are generating citations for clients so that those clients can then focus on relationships and insights, or maybe it's a contradiction, and maybe it's responsible for the failure of agencies to be more powerful and effective partners for the clients that they're working with. I'm gonna show you what the survey told us, and hopefully you'll be able to make up your own mind before I tell you what I think. The key thing that came across from the survey that we conducted is that there are critical success factors for analyst relations. Many. Dozens of people took our survey. They are in dozens of different companies. They've all got very different internal realities. But some things came across very clearly and are held in common across most of the organizations that had colleagues that took part in the survey. One was that their key objectives for analyst relations are improving the awareness of analysts and finding ways that that awareness could be turned into support for sales and marketing. And there are 2 key challenges that most organizations seem to share. One is it's hard to measure the outcomes of analyst relations in a tangible way. And I suppose I might say many of the most tangible ways to measure analyst relations aren't necessarily very helpful. But also the understanding of analyst relations is low. And of course, it's particularly hard to improve the understanding of analyst relations if we're using tangible measurements of the wrong things or of things that aren't helpful. But this tension, I think, is most clearly shown by what the in-house analyst relations people told us was important, and then what the agency side people told us was important. That for the in-house colleagues, it's getting noticed, it's supporting sales and marketing, it's improving internal understanding. Those were the top 3 things that they told us were their goals. And then 4th came flagship outputs and citations. Obviously, they are really important for our site, for our internal stakeholders, but not the only thing. However, when we asked people on the agency side what their targets were, what their objectives were, they mentioned flagship outputs. So, Magic Quadrants, Forrester Waves, these flagship pieces of research, quadrants, I suppose, broadly. Citations, so other kinds of outputs, mentions in other analyst outputs, getting mentioned, and creating advocacy. and of course, it would be wrong to say that there's a contradiction between any of these things. If you get more of one of these things, hopefully you're getting more of them. But certainly there's a mismatch that the agencies are really focused on generating mentions, and the inside firms are asking for a range of other things. So that's what I'm saying in a nutshell. I'm going to go on now to step through the survey in a little bit more depth. You'll see that I've got these brightly colored kind of interstitial slides through the deck, and they're my excuse for taking a sip of water and taking a peek into the Q&A, just in case there's anything super important or confusing that I've said that I can help clear up. So I'm going to do that. So let me step into a little bit more about who we spoke to. We had 63 people who responded to the survey. Most of them, 50 or so, were in-house professionals. So primarily full-time analyst relations people or full-time advisor relations people. And then agency side professionals. So a mixture of people on the agency side, mostly were people working for public relations agencies. And what was interesting for us, comparing these data against a previous survey, we used exactly the same questionnaire back in 2018. Well, I say we, the praise has to go to Susanna Archibald, who designed this questionnaire and executed this questionnaire back in 2018. What we saw in the sample was, compared to 2018, more of the people who took our survey are in-house professionals. That may just be that our database reflects more in-house people, but it may be that actually that there are more in-house people, and analyst relations is getting stronger in-house more quickly than it's strengthening on the agency side. That certainly does make sense to me. And we asked people how far their organizations understood analyst relations. Yeah, we asked them to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, where 5 was average, and on average, the people who took our survey scored their companies 7 out of 10 on the scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being highest. So roughly 2/3 of people are saying that their organizations are above average. And okay, on the one hand, maybe statistically, a maximum of half can be above average. But if you think about it, maybe analyst relations people are more concentrated in organizations with an above average understanding of analyst relations, and organizations with a lower than average understanding of analyst relations maybe don't have analyst relations people, don't have analyst relations agencies. But generally, it's a good thing, I think, that the people who took the survey, people like you, people like me, are in organizations that seem to get analyst relations, even if they're not perfect. What we have seen, though, is that the analyst relations budget is moving slightly. So we asked people whether they hold the budget for their organizations. Obviously, this is only a question that the 52 in-house people could take. The 11 people on the agency side had to skip it. But what we saw, 2 in 3 people were holding some budget. Maybe there's more than one budget. But we also saw that the percentage of people who said that they were spending somebody else's budget, spending an analyst relations budget that was controlled by another department, that increases. And we found that really interesting. It says to us that analyst relations professionals have to anticipate that they might be more likely than in the past to explain their value, to explain the value of analyst relations for people who might be a little bit further away. And in fact, we'll see this later on when we ask people who they are reporting to, you'll get a clue about what this shift is. We asked people who is responsible for analyst relations within your organization, and most people, but it's a small majority, 52%, most people said that they report to marketing and communications. And I must say, for most of the last 20 years, when I've seen surveys like this, that number has been bigger. What's interesting is that we see the percentage of people who say that they report to senior management, so analyst relations directly reporting to senior management rather than to marketing communications. That percentage has risen quite notably from 20% in 2018 to 27% today. So I think that gives a suggestion that the budget for analyst relations is maybe more likely now to be held by senior executives, and that analyst relations has to directly justify itself to senior management for the budget that it has, rather than it being part of a marketing communications pie. Obviously, for half of people, still reporting to marketing communications, but this seems to be an important change, that we're being funded by other people, we're accountable to other people, so we have to ensure that we're speaking in the language that those who are responsible for AR, speaking in the language that they can understand. We asked people about the top concerns for analyst relations. There are many. We got a huge amount of free text comment back in the survey. In some of the later slides, I give you a flavor of that. I've picked out some of the comments that struck me the most. I've tried to organize them into a word cloud, not very visible even on my screen, but I've put on the right-hand side the words that appeared the most. And these are not very surprising, I think. It's about increasing analyst awareness. It's about supporting sales. It's about mentions in reports. It's about positive coverage. It's about categories. It's about clients. It's about gaining feedback. So many diverse goals. And I think when we go later on, I think we'll see that there are slightly different goals for slightly different kinds of organizations. There's a lot of text on this slide, but what I'm going to do is just say something about this slide and then have a little bit more water, peek at the questions again. So when we asked people about their objectives, two large groups of things came across. One was getting noticed by analysts, and the other was support for sales and marketing. So these purple blocks, these are categories that I've tried to generate that gather these things together. And the black text with the red circles, these are free text comments that I've taken out from the survey responses. And you'll see this format on later slides as well, that I've tried to put in as much of the verbatim comment from the slides as possible, just to give a better flavor of what was on people's minds. And certainly I'm really interested in getting your feelings about this. But the two things that came across most strongly when we asked people about their objectives was getting noticed by analysts and supporting sales and marketing. I can see there are a few more questions and comments. I'm just going to take a sip of my water and then pop into those. Some of these questions I'll have to come back to later on. An interesting comment that I'll share with you actually from one of the participants. Reporting to senior management might indicate some analyst role in competitive intelligence, strategic planning processes, product definition and strategy, but none of that inbound advice is mentioned yet. Okay, well that is actually coming on the next slide, but it's an important point there that reporting to different managers probably means delivering different kinds of value to those internal stakeholders. So those are the primary things, getting noticed by analysts and supporting sales and marketing. And then there were some secondary things. So thirdly, improving understanding. And I think this is a really important thing when we're feeding back to delivering more insight to senior executives, to product managers, to competitive intelligence colleagues. A hugely important thing for many people is driving analyst usage inside our own organizations. So making sure that our colleagues understand the impact of analyst relations and making sure that that insight is being driven back into the organization, and in particular, seeing if there are insights from analysts that we can feed back to assist business growth. So I think driving analyst usage is super important for organizations that are clients of analysts or that have got access to analyst research. Certainly a huge part of our effort, actually it's the focus for my colleague Zoe, a huge part of our effort is mining the interactions that we have with analysts to find insights and to ensure that the insights that we're getting from our interactions with analysts, where analysts might, they might be a little bit more open, or they might speak rather differently from the way that they do in their research, that we're able to get that insight and feed it back into the business. This is definitely something that's really important for our clients. And then fourthly, completely unsurprisingly, flagship outputs. Yeah, so people want to be better placed in key ranking reports. Obviously, this is especially important for large, mid-sized organizations, which are in those reports. If you're a small organization, if you can't get into a ranking report, if there's no ranking report for your sector, then that's maybe going to be a more modest goal. But increasing positive mentions in research, that's definitely something that's important, both directly in terms of engaging with analysts and getting analysts to hear your story, hear your accounts, but also looking at things like Gartner's peer reviews and other ways of getting feedback from your customers into the hands of analysts, because analysts are probably going to trust your customers more than they trust you. And then there were some other things that were mentioned much less often by minorities of the participants in the study. Relationship building. I mean, okay, you might think relationship building would be more important. Certainly, it's the third most important for many of the in-house people. But influencing the key analysts and providing value to analysts. Yeah, so of course we understand the need to obtain value for our own organization, but in fact, it's by helping the analysts to do what they need to do that they will value us and will become trusted advisor. And then thought leadership. This is something which was extremely important for a small number of people and not on the radar of most people. So new category development, very important for many of the smaller, high growth venture capital funded clients that we have. They really understand that categories get co-created and that analysts are partners in that. And thought leadership more broadly in terms of education of the marketplace was a common goal for a minority of the participants in the survey. But really over these slides, I've really kind of listed them in frequency. And then after goals, we asked about challenges. What are the obstacles that people encounter when they are dealing with their analyst relations programs? And three things came out as top challenges. So these top three factors were scored as first, second, or third by most of the people who took the survey. Yeah, so they're ranked here by their average score in the chart. Top challenge is difficulty measuring tangible analyst relations outputs on a quantifiable basis. Second problem, the organization misunderstands analyst relations and what analyst relations can achieve. And then thirdly, problems aligning analyst relations strategy to wider sales and marketing. Now that is a big riser. In 2018, I think it was 5th or 6th on the list. This year, it's pushed up into 3rd. These are absolutely not the only obstacles that colleagues have. There are certainly other obstacles, but the fact that there are challenges in tangibly measuring AR means that it's very hard to explain to AR. It's very hard to explain AR value to our organizations. It means that we're using other measurements, which might not be adequate, or it means that we're presenting the value without being able to measure it, which is not so convincing. And the problem with AR alignment to sales and marketing, of course, is amplified by both of these 2 points. It can be really hard to point to the value that AR is contributing to sales and marketing without AR having measurements that are collected by sales or collected by a measurement and can be traced back to AR. So, clients of ours, for example, that are using, that have licensed Analyst reprints and are able to see which firms have downloaded an Analyst reprint and where they've gone through the sales pipeline, and can see the millions of dollars that have been added onto their sales pipeline by the Analyst content that they've generated. They're able to do that, but not using data that the analyst relations teams are generating. It's by using the data that the marketing team is generating. Similarly, when we're looking at the value of the pipeline that the sales team is able to get from word of mouth recommendations, or from recommendations that either clients or analysts have told us have been catalyzed by analyst recommendations, it's really only the sales team who can collect that data. Very hard for AR to collect it in a non-intrusive way. So that's a real problem with strategy. AR can't really set strategy using metrics of other people that it doesn't control. It would mean AR strategy would be set for us by our partners in the rest of the business. Now, when we narrow our focus onto people who are on the agency side, we asked agency people, what do you think are the top objectives for your clients' AR programs? You'll see in this chart, we got 29 answers there. That is not 29 people working for different agencies. That is, I don't know, 11, 12 people who work for agencies, but on average, they selected 2 or 3 of the options. But 62% of the people who answered the question said top objective was to be a leader or a visionary in a flagship report, so in the Magic Quadrant, in a Forrester Wave. And then the 3 other top objectives for people on the agency side was to create mentions in analyst reports, so more mentions, but just not in flagship reports, to get us noticed, and to create analyst advocacy. So many goals, many goals, but these are the primary ones. And more than anything else, it's about being mentioned in flagship reports and being mentioned in other reports. That's what AR people think their clients want, or say that their clients want. So another pause to peek at questions and drink some water. So our next question was asking people, what should agencies offer? So we were asking people who are potential AR buyers or current AR buyers, what should agencies be buying? Because most of them aren't buying from agencies. So there will be a replay and there will be copies of the slides available as well. So what could agencies do better? What do people on the demands, what do buyers of analyst relations services, in-house analyst relations people, what do they think that agencies could be doing differently or doing better or just doing? So top thing is getting noticed through analyst interactions. Yeah. So partly through the mechanics of those interactions, and partly through developing a narrative which makes those interactions possible. That's definitely the key thing. People want hands and feet to mobilize analysts. And they also increasingly want to support sales and marketing. So there are many ways that analyst relations is under increasing pressure to align itself to sales and marketing, and what are the ways that agencies might be able to support this? I think this is a stretch for many agencies. I mean, my agency sells marketing services, but I think it would be a really intriguing experience, to be honest, to look after customer reference management for a client, to be generating content marketing support, lead generation support, cold calling. You can see that these are really concrete needs for organizations, especially where the analyst relations team is licensing reprints. How do we make sure that content marketing programs that are aimed at customers also serve non-customers? How do we generate those leads and then qualify those leads through calling or other research? Big challenges for agencies. I'm going to talk through this slide again, and then hopefully when we put the recording back online, it'll be super smooth and nobody will notice anything. When we look at the secondary issues that people think that they might be able to help analysts with, they spoke about internal understanding and they spoke about flagship outputs. And initially, when I thought internal understanding, well, I thought that would be about understanding of analyst insights. But actually, it was not. It was developing internal understanding of the analyst relations process itself. That is what they felt that agencies were struggling to do, and where they needed the help of agencies. They felt that agencies needed to do a better job of demonstrating the value that analyst relations can bring to their clients, and demonstrating the value that analyst relations could bring to the agency itself. So showing how analyst relations can support PR and marketing, showing how to sell analyst relations internally. That's absolutely something that I see at CCgroup, that very often when I am, when a potential client comes to me and wants to engage us, very often we are supporting them through a process of winning internal consent inside the company for analyst relations to happen. And insight and guidance on research subscriptions and on working with analyst firms more closely. This is also really important, and something that is, it feels to be much more evident than, say, 10 years ago, that people who are clients of analyst firms can see that there's a very big difference between the experience of being a smart customer who knows how to navigate their way around the account manager, navigate their way around the analysts, and a less engaged analyst customer who might be less well aware about how to get the full benefit. I think that seems like a big difference. If you think back to like when I started off in analyst relations, firms like Forrester had research navigators who would proactively contact you and let you know about research, and would make sure that you were getting as much value as you could do out of the firm. Now it seems to me much more dependent on the customer to be a good customer and to extract the value that they can get. But certainly research outputs are a completely unsurprising form of value that people want to get out from their organizations. Many people want regular updates on feature opportunities. This always makes me groan with horror. In fact, there's a wonderful blog post that my colleague Elena Georgieva has written about how dangerous it is for you to try to take the public relations forward features approach and transpose that onto analyst relations. Strategically, it completely turns you around sometimes. I mean, of course, that it's much, obviously you would want to know, you'd rather know than not know that something is going to be written. But the challenge is that organizations focus exclusively on the research that they know is in the pipeline, and they completely ignore building relationships with people at analyst firms that don't publish their research pipelines. And certainly measuring the value of those research outputs. That's something that we are doing a lot at CCgroup. We're really blessed to be using the premium content add-in for Architect. I don't know how many people are using the premium content add-in, but I think that is well worth paying. Well worth paying extra to get hold of that, because it allows you to see the diffusion of research, the diffusion of ideas in a very different way. Allows us to develop share of voice metrics, which give us the ratio between the traditional mentions, media citations, research mentions, and then on the other hand, the social mentions, the tweets, the blog posts. That ratio seems to be a very good proxy for activation in a way. And finally, when we asked people about the value that the agencies could be generating for clients, of course, relationships come through. Many in-house analyst relations people think that they already have those relationships. Very often they have those relationships with the top tier of analysts. What we find is that very often our clients know the Gartner analysts, they know the Forrester analysts, but actually they may not have interacted with the IDC, the Omdia, the global data people. They may not have interacted with the the bottom of the top tier or the top of the long tail as fully as they might do. And they might not necessarily be able to help understand which analyst firms are most influential in a particular region, in a particular market sector that they're growing into. So this relationships with top analysts is really double-sided. There's being able to build relationships and being able to understand who the top analysts are. And I would certainly say that is something that we can bring to clients quite powerfully. But then there's a much simpler benefit, of course, that working with extending your research, extending your resource means that you can reach out to more researchers. So you can understand the analysts better, put more effort into researching who the analysts are who are influencing different market sectors. And then with an agency, you can reach out not just to the top 2 or 3 people in a particular market, but to all of the analysts that you would want to. And then one thing that comes across quite strongly is thought leadership. And I must say, comparing the data from 2018 to the data from this year, this seems to be something that is coming across much more strongly in more recent responses, is that agencies can help align and narrate the stories for business. It's definitely something that I see speaking to clients, is that clients are much more interested than ever before in being able to use the pictures that we craft. So we will segment when we're working with a client, we will segment the analysts into different groups, either by their personality or by their business versus technology focus, or by the particular technology that they're most interested in, and then craft different pictures. And the effort in narrating these narrating differently to different clusters of analysts, this seems to be more important. Being able to identify and elevate the profile of those analysts who you can partner with for thought leadership. There's not much point going to Gartner and asking a Gartner analyst for a quote for a press release I'm sending out next week, unless I'm quoting from something that Gartner has written already, they're probably not going to allow the quote. But there are other people who can be partners in that way. And then, of course, how to position better. So being able to map the way that analysts are understanding the market and understanding how to leverage what the analysts are saying to help thought leadership to become more able to win leadership and to gain an echo in the wider market. So those are the ways that people thought that agencies could work with them. Okay, another one of my water break slides. I seen something else come in on the chat. So I'm just going to take a peek at that. And let me go into the next session on challenges and pains and trends. So we asked people about these things, about what their problems are. So again, there's a lot of text here, so I might just leave this slide on the chart for a little while. But there are two key pain points that were mentioned more than anything else by the participants in the survey. One is getting the firm noticed. So the sorts of things that people said was startups are struggling to get profile, analyst independence is harder to navigate, it's challenging to find genuine experts, and the top analysts are harder to get to. And then there's certainly pain points in supporting sales and marketing. So the reprint packages, personally, I think reprint packages are still great value, but many people can see the price of reprints going up. And there are smaller firms which are trying to get into the marketing support, sales support part of the industry more aggressively. In some niches, better than others. Last month we had a webinar about fintech, and I definitely think that the niche players in the fintech industry are doing really well at monetizing through reprints, but in other market sectors it's just not the case. But this is something that is very complex, and obviously there are some people who would like AR to be to have a different place in that process. Then there are pains relating to internal understanding, making the case for more time, not just for the executives to interact with analysts, but to be better prepared so that those interactions are effective. Understanding the impact of budget constraints. And then with the explosion of smaller technology influencers, new influencers, sourcing advisors, and so on, it becomes harder for the analyst firms themselves to assert their value. And this is definitely something that comes through from the analyst value survey, is a really strong benefit from analyst firms that are broadening out the quality of their service. So actually on my influencer relations blog on Friday, I posted an article exactly on this topic, looking at what the analyst value survey data tell us about the way that niche firms can be generating more value. And of course, flagship outputs, as always, there are lots and lots of these flagship outputs. It seems like every month there's another analyst firm coming along with its own new quadrant. So it's harder to navigate our way around these outputs. Certainly for larger organizations, they can be involved in hundreds, 2, 3, 4 hundreds of these evaluations from different firms is not unheard of, and it can be extremely difficult to triage those and to explain internally why you are prioritizing some over others. And then in terms of relationships with top analysts, comments from participants were kind of predictable, I suppose. Gartner is getting really powerful. It gets more expensive to engage with the big analysts. It's harder to engage with them. Peer reviews, peer insights. This is definitely a big threat for many organizations. It's harder to get face time, and it's harder to navigate around the influencer landscape as it becomes more complex. And then thought leadership is really challenging. Yeah, lots of people are seeing that market education and thought leadership are different from lead generation, like classic content marketing to get calls to action. It can be really hard to get analysts in some organizations to step up and play the role of thought leaders rather than observing more tactical and local changes in their clients' experience. And then, of course, merger and acquisition. We're seeing many changes in the analyst landscape, not the least the ongoing merger of the Omdia brand. So already we have most of the Informa analysts inside Omdia. I think at the end of this quarter we'll see the analysts from heavy reading coming into Omdia by the middle of this calendar year. So changes, consolidation, and always with consolidation, powerful analysts become brave enough to set up for themselves. So again, just before moving into my conclusions, sip of water, check up on the questions, check up on the chat. Really interesting point here, comment here. I assume people are smart about their business. It could be that internal people get pressure to support sales and marketing and need their external teams to generate demonstrable results in coverage to keep that going. So maybe this person is saying maybe there's a division of labor going on. That what the internal people need is support for sales and marketing, but they need to demonstrate the coverage. You know, that's you know, that hangs together as an argument, but personally it doesn't really convince me. You know, if internal people need support on marketing, then they would want agencies that supported sales and marketing if that is the key thing that they're doing. I think that is really really tricky. The other thing that I would say is if you look at where analyst relations is being outsourced, I think that the agencies that are doing low quality analyst relations are really struggling, and I think premium agencies that are doing better are growing faster. That's certainly what I would say. That there's always been a price leadership opportunity in the analyst relations market, and I think I see that price leadership opportunity shrinking. Yeah? So if it was just a question of, oh well, I just need mentions, I'll outsource that, then you would go to the cheapest possible provider that would generate the highest possible number of mentions. So let me move on a little bit to conclusions. Obviously, the best way to conclude is with the way that I started. So, firstly, there's this tension. I think there's a tension. Yeah, that for our in-house stakeholders, their key goals are to get the firm noticed by analysts, to support sales and marketing, and to improve internal understanding. And when you drill into that, it's to improve internal understanding of analyst relations, yeah, to prove the value of analyst relations. And flagship outputs are secondary to that, but you can see that if the way that you show internal understanding, if the infrastructure that you give for internal understanding of analyst relations to exist is the count of the mentions, then you've just completely lost control of that. You know, it's like giving a hungry child a sugary snack and then another sugary snack so they'll calm down and eat their dinner. You know, it sounds like a good idea at the time, but maybe it's not going to work out. And I do think that there's a difference on the agency side, that on the agency side, people who took our survey were really stressing outputs, flagship outputs and other outputs. It could be that that is a division of labor, but it seems to me that it's also a value mismatch. And I want to present my view of this in this chart, that when we describe here at CCgroup, when we describe what we're doing, we call it programmatic AR. Yeah, so we're seeing people who are doing analyst relations in in other ways, we struggle to come up with a nice euphemism to describe these unprogrammatic ways, less programmatic ways. Incidental AR seems like a super polite way to refer to it. But the key elements of the analyst relations process are these five. So if people have read Ephraim Malek's textbook on industry analyst relations, Win Them Over, I think it's now in its third edition, fourth edition. There are these five elements to the analyst relations process. So identify your analysts, set goals that help you to drive the program, actually engage with the analysts, align your analyst relations to the rest of the business, and then leverage the benefits of analyst relations. And it seems to me that there's a tension between what analyst relations does when it's focused on generating mentions and what analyst relations does when it's focused on generating relationships that can generate not only mentions but other benefits as well. That I think the tension is that when you're identifying analysts, incidental AR means identifying the analysts who are going to write about us. So it absolutely does mean forward features planning, and it means finding impressionable analysts who are more likely to write about you, more likely to tweet, more likely to write something short. And actually that pushes down the analysts who are focusing on serving clients, who maybe write fewer but longer reports, who don't tweet so much, who generate fewer mentions. In terms of goals, then I think there's a tension between simply increasing the volume of mentions and briefings without regard to whether those mentions are from influential people or not. And then on the programmatic side, actually focusing on shifting the perception of the influential analysts and maybe not really paying that much attention on mentions or briefings with people who aren't that influential. In terms of the engagement model, it's about whether the analyst should be supporting the vendor, whether the analyst should be supporting the vendor's media campaigns and media priorities. So pushing the topical campaigns that are coming along your news pipeline. And on the other side, on the programmatic AR side, supporting the analyst, asking the analyst what they are doing and finding out what we can do to help the analyst, because we want to build a relationship and show the analyst that we're helpful, not just to the analyst, but presumably if we're helpful to analysts, we're also helpful to our customers. And then alignment, I see this so often. Alignment can mean looking at what the analysts say and looking for the analysts to be saying the same things as what the media is saying when they say what the firm wants them to say. And I think that's super helpful, of course, but I think it's more important to focus on feeding insights back into the business. Yeah, analysts aren't that interesting when they repeat what we've told them to say. They're more interesting when we can hear the questions that they've got. They're more interesting when they challenge us. They're more interesting when they give us surprises. Yeah? So that process of feeding analysts insights back to the business, that is a key point of alignment. And then in terms of leverage, I see very often we leverage it internally. We leverage it to count the numbers of mentions and to show that these mentions are working for us. So they are simply ballast that we're using defensively internally, rather than amplifying positive coverage and amplifying positive analysts above their natural level. So understanding which people you are shifting in your direction and finding a bigger audience for them. Okay, so that's what we found from our survey. I know many of the people on the call have taken the survey, so thank you very much for participating in the survey. Comment here. So these last 2 points, amplify and leverage, are huge, and most organizations miss it internally, says somebody. One interesting question here is, I said that I've got I've got this feeling that these days clients of analyst firms have to work harder to get to extract value from the analysts. Why is that? Why does it seem to be harder? Well, I think one reason why it's harder is because costs rise. Yeah, so it's harder for organizations to afford the analyst access that they're used to because there are continual price rises. I mean, in fact, I'm old enough to remember, except I can't even remember. I think it was 2007, maybe it was 2008. But there was one year where both Forrester and Gartner doubled their average price per seat. Yeah? So analyst firms are much less affordable than they used to be, and the flexibility that clients used to have is greatly reduced, especially at Gartner. I think it's fair to say, especially at Gartner, it's much harder for somebody with an advisory seat to get other people into the call. It's much harder to organize strategic advisory days and to get the analysts to spend time with you. And I think there are a few reasons there. One is the analyst firms are continually testing their price elasticity. So they want their clients to pay more and to not necessarily get more service. But also, if you compare, over the last 15 years, Gartner's revenues have increased what, fivefold, sixfold, sevenfold, eightfold, but the number of analysts has not even doubled. So there's just a lot more work for analysts to do. So analysts are under much more time pressure. They're going to give much less. They're going to be much less well prepared for briefings and for inquiries. Certainly my experience, I'm not a Gartner customer at the moment, but my most recent experience as a Gartner customer has been, submitting an inquiry, and the first analyst can't really answer it and palms me off to a second person, and then the second person tells me to book an inquiry with the third person, and that reflects many things about the pressure, about how focused analysts are in their own silos, in how well questions and analysts are being matched. Well, I think there are many things at work there. Okay, oh no, there's one more question. Oh yeah, a great comment here from a colleague who is very familiar with Gartner. Gartner analysts are inundated with questions from clients right now. Of course, they're inundated with clients' questions about this crisis, but analysts will always give first priority to those inquiries and briefings with vendors who are relevant. Though Gartner does have a small increase. I mean, absolutely. Gartner. I remember when Gartner used to have 600 or 700 analysts. I think Gartner, I don't know, it's probably got 1,200, maybe more than 1,200 analysts now. But when you put that into the context of acquisitions, the number of analysts has definitely not increased anything like as quickly as the number of clients has. So definitely that the pace of work is much more demanding for analysts than it used to be. I really appreciate all the questions. I can't come into to all of them, but what I will do is draw attention again to my email address. Please email me if you've got questions or comments. I know I've thrown a lot of information at you, so look out for the replay and for the slides. The other thing that I should say is there's also going to be a white paper based on this research. So on the CCgroup website, you may have seen that we've got these catalyst research reports. So we commission independent market research looking at buyer behavior in different markets. So this report will be published into the series of catalyst reports. So look out for that report as well when it comes out. Benefit of that. So thank you so much for your time. I'm going to wrap up now, and look forward to speaking to you in the very near future. Okay, thank you so much.